A BYU boy is headed to Dinkytown for an official visit here in May. We're going to talk about that transfer prospect as well as some quarterbacks in the class of 2024 and 25. And the Big Ten is on the rise when it comes to quarterbacks and why it is looking good for the whole conference to get some well-deserved respect.
Hey,
you are Locked On Golden Gophers.
No matter what we're going to do here, we're just going to keep rowing.
Your daily podcast on the Minnesota Golden Gophers.
However it turns out, we're just going to keep rowing.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
We're just going to keep rowing, and keep rowing.
Yes, sir. You are listening to Locked On Golden Gophers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name's Kane Rob, host of the podcast, former collegiate football video coordinator and recruiting assistant, here to talk Golden Gophers with you each and every day of the week, Monday through Friday. Today, we've got quite a few topics we want to cover, and it's going to be a good one. So all you audio listeners over there, be sure to leave a 5-star review wherever you get the podcast, whether that be Stitcher, Spotify, Apple Pods, you name it. It helps others find the podcast and helps us build this community. And if you're looking for more content or you want to get involved with the chitter and the chatter right away in commenting, then be sure to head on over to YouTube and hit subscribe over on that platform as well. I've been loving the feedback I'm getting over there. And in fact, today's show, actually, part of the topic was thanks to a commenter from yesterday's YouTube video. So definitely be sure to let me know what topics you want to hear about, because you just might hear it. In fact, you probably will hear it with this offseason coming up with the Gophers. So let's talk about some things. Today, we're going to talk about the new prospect transfer portal guy who is coming to visit here in May for the Gophers. Then we're going to move on to some quarterbacks of 2024 class and 2025 class that the Gophers have officially offered. And finally, why the Big Ten can change the narrative for the QB stigma they've received over the years. But kicking it off, we're talking about George Udo. He is coming to Dinkytown, not this weekend, but next weekend for an official visit, hopefully for the long haul as well. Now, his visit is May 12th through the 14th weekend. Initially, he was a California prospect in high school in the 2019 cycle, and he was a 2-star guy. So he has moved his way on up. He has worked hard, and now he's looking for a shot at a Power 5 school. Now, like I said, he committed to BYU initially, and he played the past 4 years there. He committed to BYU over Sacramento State, but he did play in the 4 seasons at BYU, and he saw action in about 37 games. Now, that spans from special teams action as well as some DB on the defensive side of ball action as well. Now, he played in 37 games, had 44 tackles, 6 tackles for loss, and a few sacks as well. Now, the best season that he had so far in his time with BYU was his highest graded season, which was the 2020 season, which also coincided with the most snaps he has received in a single year. So that's a positive thing. The more opportunities had, he's done well with it. Now, in that season, he finished with a 76.0 PFF grade. Now, of his 151 total snaps, 76 of them have come from the slot. He's also seen some work from the field corner position as well. But this past season, he had a PFF grade of 64.5 and a coverage grade of 64.8. So those could still tick up a little bit, but it's solid. It's definitely good if you're looking at more of a rotational player or a depth player. So he can definitely fill a role for the Gophers. He can fill a much needed depth need at the cornerback position, as we've talked about. Now, the Gophers have brought in one transfer in Trayvon Jones. We talked about him on yesterday's show, but hopefully the Gophers will bring in at least one more corner to really help fill out that room. Now, overall, I think Udo could be a great depth or rotational player for the Gophers and work in that slot corner. Now, I don't think he would start there because that role is obviously going to Jack Henderson after the way he showed out this spring, but you need to have a guy who can step in there in case Henderson needs a breather, in case whoever is playing the vast majority of that slot reps needs some space, some air, some wind, whatever you want to call it. They're going to need a moment, and you need it just in case of depth for injury and things of sorts too. So I think he can fill that role. And if he needs to push outside, I think he has the ability to do so. The biggest thing will be how quickly can he come along? And if he does come along for the ride, how quickly can he push some of the younger guys? Because those guys have seen a lot of opportunities now in these early camps. Plus, you've got Zaquan Bryan coming in town too. So I think overall, you're looking at more of a rotational corner for the Gophers. But again, we need that depth. Now, a fun fact about Udo is he played against Tanner Mordecai, the Wisconsin Badgers' new quarterback, in the bowl game last year. So that was a fun little fact. He gave up 2 receptions on 3 targets, but it only totaled for 14 total yards. Now, that overall isn't the only BYU connection that the Gophers may have. In fact, a former BYU quarterback's younger brother is just one of a number of quarterbacks in the 24 and 25 classes that Minnesota has offered. We will talk about who that quarterback is and other potential targets coming up next. But first, let's talk about our friends over at Built Bar. Now, you've heard me talk about it time and time again, but I just have to stress the fact that these things actually taste good. And I wouldn't be gassing it up and amping it up so much. I would be just, getting through it if I didn't believe it, but I truly do. Now, I'm not sure how they do it because it literally tastes like a candy bar. Some of the flavors are that good, and yet somehow it's still nutritionally good for you. The macros are amazing. And what I said is it's healthy. So it's only 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and a whopping 17 grams of protein. Now, I don't know about you, but that sounds great to me. That's why I stock up over at Built.com using promo code LOCKEDON15 for 15% off your order, and you can do the same over at Built.com. And if you don't want to wait and you've got to get the box now, then you can head on over to Sam's Club or Walmart to the pharmacy section and check it out. And I know, anytime you check out a protein bar from the pharmacy section, it's usually chalky or tastes terrible. This will be the exception. Trust me now. So head on over, get a Built Bar, and let me know what you think about it down below. Now, Gophers fans, thank you so much for making Locked On Golden Gophers your first listen when it comes to Gophers daily sports. Now, as I said earlier, yesterday I was asked in a comment on yesterday's show to discuss some of the upcoming quarterback prospects because it seems like the Gophers have been putting offers out there to quite a few. And you're right, they have. So we're going to do that. But if you have a topic that you would like to hear, be sure to drop it in the comments over at YouTube. And for all the audio platform listeners, you're not out of this as well. You can definitely send the topics that you want to hear to us via email at lockedongoldengophers@gmail.com. I look forward to those topics. I look forward to discussing it all off season with you. And thank you for all the everydayers that are tuning in each and every day. So as you know, we're talking about the quarterbacks here. And I mentioned BYU and George Udo. Well, we've got another quarterback that the Gophers have offered that is related to a somewhat famous, I guess, BYU quarterback. So if you're looking at quarterbacks overall, when it comes to PJ Fleck and how he recruits, he is a big advocate of always having one scholarship guy in each class. And I think it's a great premise to stand by. Now, it brings competition, and I think that competition is healthy. And also, it's necessary to push your incumbent starter. Don't let people settle, but push to be the best version of themselves, the best Power 5 starter, the best NFL talent, whatever that is. But also, it helps in case of injury. And with all that said, the heir to Ethan Kaliak-Manis probably won't be in the 2024 class. Could be. I'm not going to say or guarantee it wouldn't be. But maybe in that 2025 class where it's getting closer towards the tail end, so you have a year or two of overlap in training between the two. That's what I would expect. I would expect the Gophers to go heavier in 2025 or 2026, but still to get a very capable guy in the room in 2024. Now, amongst the class of 2024, the Gophers have offered 9 quarterbacks, but 3 have already committed, so we're not going to talk about them. That leaves 6 guys. Now, of those 6, 2 of those are non-ranked quarterbacks. They don't have any stars or anything like that, which isn't to say they can't be a quality guy. Don't hear what I'm not saying. But we're not going to go too much in depth on those two, besides the fact that DeMarcus Davis of California and Drake Lindsay of Arkansas both do hold Gopher offers. And I believe we're the only Power 5 school for both of those players. Now, if you turn back towards the other remaining 4 quarterbacks in this 2024 class, that's where things start to get interesting. I mentioned a BYU quarterback's brother is in the competition, and that is none other than Isaac Wilson. He is related to Zach Wilson. I know some people might have hesitancy on that with how his NFL career has been playing out thus far, but in college, Zach Wilson, especially in his final year, was balling, like straight up. He's got some talent. He's got the off-platform throws, and you can see that with his brother as well. Now, his brother is a 4-star recruit, the highest-rated the highest-rated quarterback with an offer from Minnesota that isn't currently committed. He visited Utah in April, so they're definitely up there on his warm list, having taken an official visit. He also has ties to BYU and holds an offer, so I wouldn't be surprised to see them heavily in the running. It also seems like he's interested in UCLA, Arizona, and Oklahoma State. Again, all of them have offered him. He holds by far the most Power 5 offers of any of these guys that we're going to discuss today, including an offer from Miami and Oregon. So I wouldn't hold my breath too much on this one, although it is a fun story. But we are the only Big Ten school to take a shot on Isaac Wilson, so that's kind of interesting that none others have followed in that direction. Now, he looks mechanically more sound than his brother Zach Wilson, especially at the current age that he is at. So I think he holds a lot of upside, but I don't think the Gophers will be in that competition very much. Now, the next guy I want to talk about is Ethan Grunkmeyer. I truly think he is probably the best shot at a quarterback in this class with the Gophers, that they're kind of going in pretty hard recently. They recently offered him in April, and then right after they do, Penn State follows shortly after. It seems like both Minnesota and Penn State are the 2 programs he is heavily considering. Other P5 schools that have offered him include Duke, Virginia, Northwestern, Indiana, and Cincinnati, who will be a Power 5 at some point during his collegiate career. Now, like I said, the Gophers got in the game in April, so it's more of a recent offer out there. It's nothing where we've been able to build a huge relationship with him over the long term of things. But that being said, the Gophers are heavily in pursuit of him, and it sounds like they're trying to get closer and closer with him and let him know how much they are showing love his way. Now, he had 64% completion rate in his junior year, 2,649 pass yards, 25 passing touchdowns, and 8 interceptions. Now, he's mobile. He keeps his eyes downfield. He can throw off platform, and it seemed like he throws a lot of single read looks, so he would have to work on still getting through the progressions quicker and understanding his targets a lot faster. But the talent is all there. The arm talent is there. The ability is there. And honestly, he can put some zip on the ball. He's got a pretty strong arm. I think overall he would play a fairly similar style to Ethan Kaliakmanis, so it definitely wouldn't hurt to get the 2 of them in the same room and have him learn and grow with Ethan. We'll see if that becomes a thing, but Ethan Grunkmeyer is probably the most likely, in my opinion, to end up a Golden Gopher. Now, the next quarterback, 2 remaining that we'll talk about, is Aaron Philo, 3-star guy from Georgia. He previously committed to the University of Minnesota and then decommitted shortly after. He's a very accurate passer, nice placement on his balls. He gets through his reads. He makes smart throws. I liked the talent that I saw from him. I was excited to have him in this 2024 class. Not exactly sure what caused him to want to decommit, but it did seem like it was relatively quickly. Now, he had a state title in Georgia last year. He was Offensive Player of the Year in his division last year. He threw for just under 4,600 yards, 54 touchdowns total, and 8 interceptions as a junior. So a whole lot of passing was happening down in Georgia for him. Now, I wouldn't personally expect him to be back, but the Gophers are technically still in the race, and he could always recommit Hopefully that could happen. Other Power 5 schools that have been in contact with him, not necessarily offered, are South Carolina, Wake Forest, Duke, and then Georgia Tech has offered. Cincinnati was a recent offer as well, and they will be a Power 5 sometime in his career. And then UCF has gotten into that race as well. So I wouldn't fully expect him to come back this way, but he is a quarterback that the Gophers have heavily pursued in this class. And then the final one is Michael Merdinger, a Florida quarterback. His only other P5 offer is Georgia Tech at this point. Now, hear me. This quarterback, Michael Merdinger, was not a starter as a junior for his high school. In fact, he was the QB2 behind a UCF signee of last year's class. So he'll be the starter heading into this year, but I think this is more of a projection offer than it is a straight up, look, we know you're the guy type offer, because he hasn't even been the guy in high school yet. Now, that isn't to say he doesn't have talent, because he absolutely does. In fact, he still played in 9 games, even though he wasn't the QB1. And he passed for nearly 70% completion. And it wasn't just dink and dunks. It wasn't just like, oh, let's protect our QB2. No, he had 721 yards, 9 touchdowns, and 1 interception. He definitely showed he has the potential to be a high-level player. And I think this is the Gophers getting in early. I think this particular player, this prospect, will probably go to the wire of signing day, having to show out more in his senior year. And if he continues to show out, the offers will likely flood in his way. But I think this is more of a projection offer, more of a time for a guy to build a relationship with the coaches and see that we're interested and we would love to keep that relationship building. But I'm not sure how close or how likely he would be to come to the Gophers. So that is all of 2024. Lots of quality prospects out there. Again, Ethan Grunkmeyer is probably the most likely for the Gophers, unless they can somehow convince Aaron Philo this is the right spot for him and he had it right the first time. But I wanted to bring up the 2025 guys really briefly before we move into our final segment of the day. Now, we won't dive too much into the 2025 guys, but I do want to let you know that Minnesota has already offered 6 quarterbacks in the class of 2025. 2 of them are 3 stars. 1 of them is a 4-star, and 1 is a 5-star. In fact, that 1 5-star quarterback is the number 1 quarterback in the class right now in Bryce Underwood, who holds 35 offers already as a sophomore. So I wouldn't hold my breath too much for that one either, but it's nice to see the Gophers get aggressive early with some of these younger quarterback hopefuls. Now, speaking of quarterbacks, the QB tides are turning for the Big Ten Conference. I'm going to tell you exactly why I believe the SEC truthers out there are hypocritical in the hate for the Big Ten and always talking about how Big Ten quarterbacks aren't good, and why the Big Ten is trending upward. We're going to talk about that to wrap this one up coming up next. All right, Gophers fans, other fans of Big Ten schools, if you're just now tuning in, this is something that we all have been frustrated about, and is the fact that the Big Ten is constantly reamed for not having high-quality quarterbacks, but I think that all changes this year. Now, first off, I think it's hilarious that there's constant criticism, especially from fans and analysts of the SEC, that absolutely just diehard truther trumpers on the SEC. But then you go and look at the quarterbacks competing for some of those SEC jobs right now, and guess where they're coming from? That's right. Florida had a competition going on this spring between Jack Miller of Ohio State, who transferred, and Graham Mertz, who transferred from Wisconsin. Oh, don't think that's the only one. We move over to Auburn. Auburn is said to be looking at both Peyton Thorne from Michigan State and Casey Thompson from Nebraska, who both recently hit the transfer portal. And it doesn't stop there. Tennessee's new starter this year, or at least who it looks to be, is Joe Milton, former Michigan quarterback. Now, That is prior to Nico and his takeover eventually, whenever that happens. But nonetheless, a Big Ten former player in Joe Milton is likely going to kick off the year for Tennessee. That's 3 SEC schools right there that are turning to Big Ten transfers to lead their squads. So the criticism itself, it makes very little sense. And you can bring that up the next time an SEC truther or any others that want to hate on the Big Ten quarterbacks try to. You've got that in your back pocket ready to show out. But let's look at more of these sleeping giants that are starting to come around, because you talk about Purdue, who has multiple high quality quarterbacks in the room that could be guys. Hudson Card, Brady Allen, both of them could be quality quarterbacks in the conference. Minnesota may have its most naturally talented quarterback in program history, and we are all excited to see what he does in his first real season of being the guy. Then you move over to Wisconsin. They bring in Tanner Mordecai, who has proven to light it up in the FBS. You've got a talent in Nick Evers. We'll see how that pans out. And then you've got a rock-solid 4-star in the class of 2024. So they have some QBs that look like they could be something. You move to Iowa, who brings in a solid type in McNamara. He's shown to get to a team, to a college football playoff before, so the talent is definitely there. Now, he could be more of a game manager, but we'll see what he does with Iowa, who hasn't had a high-quality quarterback in quite some time. Now, then you move over to Nebraska. Now, Nebraska is all in on Jeff Sims of Georgia Tech. He is a pure talent. He has a play style similar to what folks falling in love with Anthony Richardson, who just got drafted to the Indianapolis Colts at pick number 4. Then you look at Ohio State. They're choosing between 2 5-star guys, high talented. Ohio State's always had some high quality quarterback talent, so we know it's going to continue for them. And then I already told y'all on previous shows, I'm a big fan of Talia Tagovailoa and JJ McCarthy. I think they're the best quarterbacks in the conference right now heading into the year. And then there's Drew Aller. Drew Aller might have the highest upside of the entire conference when it comes to the quarterback position, for a program that consistently develops and churns out NFL talent after NFL talent after NFL talent left and right each and every year. So Penn State's got a highly talented guy. The Big Ten overall, with him at the helm of the potential and all of these other young and upcoming guys coming through, I truly think the Big Ten should have many of these conferences, many of these analysts on notice, because the quality is improving. And with the new TV deal, as that gets into full swing, as more eyeballs get onto the Big Ten, I truly think you're going to see more and more talented players wanting to come this way because they watched them so much on the TV, because they grew up being a fan and watching their games. I think that TV deal is only going to help get more quality talent over to the Big Ten. So I definitely think it is on the upward and trending up. And then you mentioned play styles. Ohio State is a heavy passing team. USC will be a heavy passing team once they enter the conference. Maryland is a heavy passing team. Wisconsin is turning towards a heavy passing team. Michigan State looks like they might be turning towards a heavy passing team. And then you've got Michigan, Minnesota, Penn State, Iowa. All have been heavy running teams, but they're all looking like they're going to be passing the ball more in addition to the run game and complement with the run game. Then you've got Nebraska, you've got Purdue. They're both wild cards, but the QB talent there, I would imagine that passing is going to be a primary and done often. So the Big Ten and the stigma of that quarterback talk and it not being a quarterback power is going to change drastically. And that and the respect that it needs to get will all start coming this season in 2023. That's going to do it for us today at Locked On Golden Gophers. I appreciate you listening. Be sure to hit subscribe wherever you get the podcast. Be sure to hit subscribe over on YouTube. Join the community. I'm excited. Let's get this thing rolling. I will see you tomorrow. Row the boat. Sky Iman. Go Go.